But her career has a trajectory going like this. In the Western heritage field, the female artists are kind of a minority in a sense. It's a male-dominated field. But Roseta has held her own, and she's setting her path and drawing her lines, and we're very honored to represent her. And it's been a pleasure working with her over these years. And if anybody knows Roseta, you can feel her energy immediately. It's intense. It's as intense as her paintings. And so we'll turn the time over to her and let her go at it. Way to go.
Thanks, Leroy. Yeah, one of the reasons that, one of the strong points of the gallery is that Leroy supports all artists, female, male, you name it, we're represented well. Welcome, everybody. Booth Museum, you probably already heard all this, but if you have any questions, why don't you ask me now so I can be sure to cover anything. But I'm just going to talk a little bit about the paintings that are up. This is partially my solo show. Anybody have any questions to start with? No? Okay.
Leroy said it's a male-dominated field. Is it still?
Not in my house. No, it's I use the name Santiago for a reason. I don't want to be in a category. It's my family name to begin with, and I won't say that I argue with female artists, but I don't want them to grovel. I mentor a lot of artists, young artists, different artists, and I tell them, to show their strength and not worry about anything else. So, where should I start? Well, my whole purpose of painting is to tell the story of what I see and how I feel and what's told to me, what I've learned about the Southwest since I live here now. I moved here in 2000. Locked my door, I bought a house, locked the door, and taught myself to paint. Then I went out and bought every artifact you can imagine and learned how to paint objects, and now I'm painting people and their stories. And not just, I'm not just historic, I guess everything would be historical in the end, but I like the people that I meet, and I find everybody has a story, every single person. So, some of the people you will see repeated in the paintings because I'm fascinated with them. I'm going to start over here. I'm going to start with this because I photographed Ty Harris, who's Diné Navajo, and I actually challenged myself to take a photo and paint something to make a story about it, because I'm constantly challenging my efforts, So I had the photo printed on the left side of the canvas, took the blank part on the right, and painted it's called Sisters. And it's just showing the joy of two young ladies just being happy about receiving a vintage marriage tray, a woven tray. And that's the way my mind works. I want you to see those intimate, I find them very interesting, collaborations or interfaces between people. So that's what that is. This is one of my favorite models, Gene Braverock, who is in Dark Winds, who you've spoken to. He's in some more movies coming up. And he has a fundraiser. He's traveling across country with his Airstream trailer and in the mood to record the elders so that there is a record of what they have to say. And I find that moving. Gene was Frank Nakai in Dark Winds in the TV series. So this is called Nakai because he's no longer in the series and everybody wants to know where he is. So He's right here. So this is Ty, and I thought, well, I want to talk about Ty Harris. I noticed that when I've painted her in other wraps, in anything, any blankets, always when I put a Navajo textile on her, something happens. And now I've discovered that about a lot of nationalities. Something resonates, something happens. So I took my collection of textiles, threw them on the floor, and that's Ty wrapped up in her textiles. Now there's a little story here. These, of course, are Navajo pots and blankets. And up in the corner is a pair of moccasins. And the legend I was told is when the relationship is over, the woman puts the moccasins at the front door. And that's what that is. Okay. I'm fascinated with lore and legends. So here in Santa Fe, it's Indian Market. It's just starting up. It's here. It's all over. There was a young man who is dancing, fancy dancing. You'll see him out there if you're out on the plaza or anywhere. And he's a single, just a guy dancing. He wants to talk to people, show them his it's not a big production, just showing people what he thinks, how he feels. So I got a photo of him and captured him in this called Dance the Wind, right here. And then over here, I also love to paint artifacts. That's what I started out painting. I started with pottery, with potters. Then I moved on into other textures, feathers, beadwork, and now I paint a lot of portraits. And it's a constant moving up the scale of ability. And I didn't think I could paint people a few years ago, but I just jumped into it. So that's where I'm at. And there are some paintings in the other room that are for the show. And if you have any questions, just yell out or raise your hand. I was going to show you this painting because this is where I start every day. Every single day I get up, I make coffee.
Do it, Roseta.
I love what I do. What? So I'm at a stage in my life where I get to get up, make coffee, and move to the easel. I downsize, like a lot of us have. And my responsibility is what I'm driven by, and that's paint. So a lot of times I'm going to show you something a little off the beaten path, but it's something that's been floating in my head for 20 years. And the reason is I started out, I was dreaming of being a painter. And I went to the Tate Gallery in London and saw a painting called The Lady of Shalott by Waterhouse, based on a piece of prose poetry. And I looked at it and I said, okay, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to be. So for the show, I painted a version of that. I've already painted the painting with Ty as my, me in the canoe, being the Lady of Shalott. But then I took parts of that and tried to capture the meaning of where I was today with that thought. And so I painted Lost, which doesn't mean I'm lost. But this painting is to provoke the feeling of floating You can look at it closer, but it has the Lady of Shalott tapestry on the canoe. Okay. And it has meaning. And a songwriter came into the gallery and saw this when I brought it in, and she's writing a piece that I'll put on the back. But I'm trying to absorb emotion into my painting, a lot of that, other than joy or honor, and just interesting things that I think are important for everybody to see. There's another painting that I'll talk about, and it's sold. It came in and sold, and it's called Process. What I was trying to capture is what goes on in my mind, my creative thoughts, between that, my heart and soul, and the canvas. And so it's a little different. It looks like a deconstructed painting, but it's fascinating, and you'll see that. You'll see that too, I think, if we can have it out after this talk. So.
Talk about the two of the moons.
The moons. There's a lot of symbolism in all of my work. And in these, the moons, the gold. In the still life, it's always the white cloth. It's where I think something is sacred. It's not specifically religious, but I call it sacred, and I honor it by either having a white cloth under still life. In this case, I used a gold halo symbol. I was thinking about this morning, and in some of my paintings, I have the Santa Fe Railroad logo, the old one. And that's because my dad, who came from the Philippines in the Navy, spent 34 years in the Navy, became a cook, and then became Harry Truman's cook, and took the first railroad crossing with Harry Truman. And I use that symbol to honor my dad. And so in my family, we all have a lot of drive, and we want to honor our ancestors, etc. And so I decided when I was going to be a painter that I had to figure that out, how to paint, where I'm going to paint. So I worked with the Bass Pro Shops I did 33 stores. And mainly I was up in a lift. They would request stuff. Okay, paint this biplane so it looks like it's sitting in the it was sitting in the water. And if you've ever seen it, it would probably be as high as the ceiling here, a real biplane hanging. And I would be up in a lift painting a water line on the pontoons and things like that. Things I never did before, and it was exciting. But in each location, they'd drive me around and say, well, okay, when you paint the hunting department, we need to have these kind of ducks, this kind of grass. So that kind of formed my need to have accuracy. And anyway, that was, after that, I designed and built theme restaurants and nightclubs, and I became a contractor. I actually did the blueprints. I didn't have a contractor's license or an architect's license, but we figured out a way to put that in together with the drawings. So I did about maybe 20 stores of different sorts, restaurants, and and I started out with being a graphic designer, and it just snowballed. I went to Italy last month in June to the Museum of World Culture to give a presentation on my art, which was really wonderful. So I had banners up, and they'll be up until November. Came back June 7th and started finishing the show. So here we are. Yes. I do everything that works. So what works for me, since I'm working at 3 in the morning or 1 in the morning sometimes, or 5 a.m., I meet a lot of models, and I only paint a few because I look for something a little deeper than a pretty face or pretty body or whatever. And so I get to know them, I spend time with them, I hear about their family, I do a photo session, and really learn more about them. And as you can see, the more I get to know a model, the better I can do a portrait or a painting of them. So I work from photos, and I work from real life. I can do a color study in a minute, but the real work comes from 5:30 a.m. and the photos and working on it and developing what I want. But usually I can see the painting when I start. When I meet the person, I think about what I want to see them doing and who they are, and at that point, I jump into it. And it isn't a normal 8-hour day. My days are kind of like 40-hour days. But I love every second of it. That's really a treasure. I wish okay, I will tell you that November 29th, the whole gallery is having a miniature show, and it's to benefit the Red Willow Hospice group that just opened its outpatient service here in Santa Fe, and they're from Taos. They've been operating there. So we're going to have a silent auction with, I curated about 20 more artists into the show. I have Frida Kahlo showing up and the Lady of Guadalupe showing up. And it should be fun. So if you're here, please either tune in or come by. I think that's going to be a really neat show. And my solo show is at the end of this month. So all the paintings will be up. Okay, that's it. Thank you.